So I'd like to introduce Dr. Valerie Gremillon. Did I say that right?
Yeah, Gremillon.
Yes, Dr. Valerie.
Gremillon.
All right, she's here, she's an activist, and she's going to talk to us about fracking.
Uh-oh.
Thank you. Actually, I brought my own little water glass there because water is the issue.
Water is life.
Water is life, and I'm just going to talk really rapidly here. Actually, first I'll just give you just a bit of my background. I'm a complex systems scientist with a PhD in neuroscience, but I've jumped over into ecology, evolutionary biology, nonlinear dynamics, and business. And so I'm very interested in the bigger picture of New Mexico and how do we make all of this work. And we already spoke briefly about fracking. It isn't my field, it isn't my specialty, but I would lay my body in front of trucks in Santa Fe for that, because everything you're saying, I actually agree with everything you're saying, which is sort of astonishing. But none of it will be
Get used to it.
Good. I hope to. Let's get used to that. Let's get used to someone who's a straight talker and who's willing to address all of the problems instead of pretending they're not there, which would be great.
Thank you.
So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
For facing them head on is what we need to do. And that's actually what I want to talk about, is that we have huge problems because we are dependent on things that could kill us. I mean, everything that you're saying is wonderful, and I agree with it, and I would back all of your proposals that I've heard so far, but if we don't stop fracking our state, we cannot guarantee that we will even survive and can live here. So this is a core survival issue, and I'm just going to let's not extinguish ourselves and take everything else with us. So I'll just mention three primary things. One, obviously, groundwater contamination, and we're going to get into that. The second one is all the other health issues that can arise either from those carcinogens, which I noticed they call them just 0.49%. And I'm like, yes, but you don't, I mean, that's enough to poison the well. And this is the core concept that we need to understand. And I can understand if everyone in New Mexico is friends with oil and gas people, but the truth is that once we re-inject that water back into the ground, we cannot clean it. It doesn't really matter what they say, whether or not they can or not. The truth is that there are too many nooks and crannies. It's the most complex architecture of all is our soil. We can never undo that. And so we're talking about beyond the precautionary principle. We're talking about whether or not we are willing to sell for short-term profit the futures of New Mexico and all of our children. So to me, this is the big question. And I also want to note that earthquakes, we don't need earthquakes. Oklahoma started out with no earthquakes. Now they're having hundreds of mini earthquakes a day due to primarily not the actual fracking itself, but the re-injection of the wastewater, which is the part that I'm having a big problem with. And I just want to make a couple of points here, which is the first one being that when I did bring up fracking to you, I said, I want you to stop fracking here, but we can't do that right away. I understand that. What do you say about fracking? And do you remember what you told me?
I don't remember what I said.
Okay, you said, how will we replace those monies? And I said, I will look into that. And I actually want to convey to you that I've talked with a number of people around the state and in all of the many bureaus and departments. And the first thing a bunch of them said was, we are not collecting the fees, the licensing, all of the permitting. Literally, they are using fees and other set monies from the 70s and 80s. So we are being massively underpaid by our oil and gas people. So the first thing would be, go get those monies.
And what's also happened in our state with oil and gas is over the last few years, probably the last 10 years, our local oil and gas companies have literally, our owners have literally sold to Texas-based companies. And again, what's happening now, and I agree with you on this, is they're taking literally all our profits out of state. And so everybody's taking our profits. Our own state does it, our own investment funds do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that they're investing back into New Mexico, back into renewable energies, back into cleaning our water, and those are job creators and economic drivers. And so I've sat down with them, I've talked to them, and let me make this, I have twin boys that are that are 9, third graders.
They're great.
I got to protect the world for them too, right? And I wish we could move away, and I'm just straight shooter, being honest. I can sit here and tell you we're going to move away from fracking from day one when I get in office. I'll be lying to you. It's 37% of our economy. It's 37% of our economy. It's 37% of New Mexico jobs. 37% of our jobs. You can interrupt me and we can argue all day long, and we can talk about it afterwards. But I'm just
Hang on,
trying
I'm going to go after him.
I'm just trying to be honest with you. So what I'm saying is that's why we're talking about diversifying our economies. I ask you then, stand up please, and I ask you, what's your response besides shutting it down? What are you going to do with $3 billion of our teachers out of work? I ask you. Answer please.
We're all going to be dead.
Answer please.
We're all going to be dead.
What are you going to do next year for our teachers?
Because we'll be dead.
What are you going to do next year for our teachers? What are you going to do next year for our teachers? You're going to be dead next year. I'm just asking you. We have to be realistic. We have to be realistic.
Okay, so I'm going to claim my time back, and just mostly because this isn't a particularly useful discussion.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. We can argue all day long, and we
but-
can solve our problems.
But what I am hearing is that we may not be collecting half of the money. We're not talking small amounts of money. We're talking, we may not even be needing to frack, essentially, depending on, are we really charging these oil and gas companies, I talked to one guy today, and he said the major problem is we don't have enough inspectors.
That is true.
And but that's been a cut from the governor's
From the
office,
Martinez
and
administration.
actually from what I am hearing from everybody in the state is pressure on the legislature from oil and gas lobbying. So I want you to make a commitment to not take oil and gas lobbying money. I would like you to actually at least put up that this is not the most important thing, and maybe even let's hold everyone to that standard, simply because there is an extinction possibility. There is a way that we can completely destroy New Mexico through this approach. And I would say, you know what, let's just consider that black gold in the ground when we really need it in 50 years for some very specific purposes, and we've learned all the environmental and health lessons from it. Let's take it then. But in the meantime, what I'm going to ask you to do, and I will just say this, I've been an independent for 20 years in New Mexico. I will go and register as a Democrat and vote for you in the primary if you will move us during your time as governor completely out of fracking. And I will give you some ways to do that. If I give you a path to do that, will you?
If you gave me a path to do that, I would take a look at that. I'm not going to
Okay.
sit here tonight and promise you that we'll get away from fracking with 8 years. What I will promise you,
Right?
that's going to be my 8-year term. What I will promise
An
you,
optimist.
what I will promise you, absolutely. What I will promise you, because I'm going to tell you what we can do, not what we can't do like my opponents.
Okay.
What I will promise you is we need to look at diversifying our economy. I agree with you 100%. You can look at Colorado as a model. 20 years ago, Colorado was literally dependent on oil and gas and tourism.
Right.
Sound familiar?
Yes.
And they invested and diversified their economy. And we can do it smarter. We can do it better too. What I have said is you have my word that I'm not going to let them frack on sacred grounds. I'm not going to let them frack at Chaco. I'm going to protect our aquifers. What we can do with technology today as we move away from fracking, what we can do with technology today is we can clean the water today. And my point is we literally can clean the water, recycle the water that they're using for fracking, so we can slow down and stop them from taking our fresh water out of our aquifers, because that's what they're doing.
Okay. Yes. And in
Now,
fact,
I
let
don't-
me.
and hold on. But
okay,
I don't.
I'll wait.
I also agree with you that they are not being regulated probably to the amount that we should be. And I've said this from day one. As governor, I will regulate oil and gas industry, as every industry, as renewables, as everybody. I will regulate it at the state level. I want to regulate it at the state level, and I think there's some smart things we talked about today that we can do.
Let me interrupt you really quick. Will you certify that if the EPA, our national EPA, removes any more protections on our water and soil and air, will the state come in and back those up? Because
I've
we
already
need
talked.
these.
I've already talked to that. As governor, I would want to accept the Paris climate agreement.
Okay, great. Yes.
I've already said that.
But I'm just saying, like, the EPA is a pretty high standard, which our current person is.
And
destroying.
again, I will govern it. I believe in the state governing themselves, and as governor, I'll regulate and govern at the state level. I don't want the feds to be doing it.
Okay, and I'm just asking, will you use at least the EPA standards, because that's what's being undermined right now, and
Absolutely.
we've already got coal mining tailings going into our rivers that no one ever asked for. And so the point that I just want to make is that the mining industry is using 350 acre feet a day of our water. Okay, some of that is recycled, and I applaud I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote a book about the Four Corners area in which they're doing the recycling thing. But the real problem is actually these injection wells. Those are the most likely to cause earthquakes. They are the most likely to crack and fracture and leak. And so what I would ask is that we take the permaculture and the bioremediation type approaches, which are successful, and frankly, there's a big initiative of that already at Lannel. Let's take that and let's not let them inject this back into the ground. Let's force it into a permaculture approach where it's cleaned by everything across the nation. Sorry, not the nation, the state. And we can use that water then.
Absolutely, that's what we're talking
So
about.
that's part of the path that I'm talking about.
But we talked about that last time. There are literally 2 or 3 companies, and they're already doing it. There are 2 or 3 companies that literally can clean our water, can clean the fracking water, and that's what we want to do. We want to clean the fracking water, make sure it's not pressurized back in the ground.
Right.
Exactly.
The pressurization
was causing the problem. So we've already talked about this. So and let me just kind of clarify. So there are New Mexico-based technology companies today, and the oil and gas guys are going down this road. We know we have to clean our water. So my proposal is, let's take the water. In fact, it's about 750 million gallons per injection, right?
Yeah.
And it's about 750 million gallons of water that goes down there. Now, at the same time, when they bring it back up and the oil comes back up, a third of the oil is water. So we're actually producing more water by it coming back up. So instead of pressurizing it and sending it back down, I agree with you 100%. What I want to do is there's New Mexico companies and there's Texas companies that are already doing it. We can literally clean our water, right? Clean the water, and then we can take the chemicals out. And right now what we're doing is we're literally trucking it and shipping it back to Texas. We can literally, as a New Mexico-based company now, that unfortunately, because we're not investing in them, they're moving to Texas, they're being invested, they're literally just raised $15 million from oil and gas companies, because the oil and gas companies see it coming. So we can literally clean our water. We can then recycle the water for their industry, stop having them take the water out of our aquifers and our rivers, and that's what I want to do. Now again, I don't think anybody's crazy about fracking. It's about moving away from that, but we have to diversify our economy. So I can sit here and lie to you all day long and say, oh, we're going to go away from fracking. That's just unrealistic. And what I'm telling you, sir, is there's 35% of our kids depend on it, 35% of our economy depend on it, so we have to move and diversify our economy and move away from that, and that's what we're talking about. So we just have to be smarter. So as governor, I'm going to regulate it. I'm going to make sure we're getting our fair share of dollars. Absolutely. I'm going to do whatever I can to invest to make sure they're not taking our money invested into Texas. I want to invest it back into here. I'm asking them to invest in renewables. They want to have that conversation.
And I would say also bioremediation is not an
Absolutely.
approach that you're mentioning, but the thing is we need to bioremediate New Mexico, and we need to permaculture all of New Mexico. That would actually change our climate profile right there.
Absolutely.
And so there are ways to, I would just say, please incentivize the oil and gas
You will be at the
companies.
table with me when we have the conversation. Deal?
Deal.
We already talked about that. Okay. And we had a conversation the other day, and I knew she was gonna. By the way, that's what I love about it. And you will have a chair at the table. You will have a seat at the table, and we will solve our problems.
Okay, great.
All right. Deal.